Today I am getting my gear ready for a corporate event that I'm going to be doing over the next 2 days, and I wanted to walk through the gear that I'm going to be using. I have worked for several years in the corporate event space, covering small events, medium events, large events, and I've worked on events where there's just me as the videographer up to, a crew of 4, 5, 6 different shooters. This one coming up is me solo as the videographer. I will have a photographer with me, but he's going to be focused on stills while I focus on motion. And so I have to cover all the motion stuff by myself. And I have worked up my rig in such a way that I can do that very efficiently and with a minimal amount of gear, or at least the minimal amount of gear that I feel is necessary and will give me the best coverage. So I wanted to walk through that, and let's just jump into it. So I use the Sony FX3, which is my workhorse of a camera. I use it really because when you get into the event world, the ability to handle low light is so important. You can be at an event and you can be outside, inside in dark rooms with stage lighting only, where you need a shot of the crowd and they are in the dark. You could have a very brightly lit stage that you're trying to capture. You could have small breakout groups that are much more lit, or maybe they're in dim rooms. It's just the spectrum of light is all over the place. It's kind of like shooting a wedding. You're just in pretty much every lighting environment possible in the course of that one event. So you really need a camera that's going to work with you and give you a great result in all those lighting conditions. So the FX3 for me is the workhorse. One, it's light enough that I can fly it on a gimbal and walk around all day or do it handheld. And then two, it's that second base ISO of 12,800 is just absolutely essential for me in some of the scenarios I find myself in covering events. So that's why I've chosen this camera. I've got several of them, and that's why I use it all the time. Anyway, so I've done a ton of approaches to different kinds of lenses. I've done primes, I've done different things for event coverage. But at this point, in the last couple of years, what I've really tried to narrow it down to is how can I cover an event with the fewest lenses needed so I can do less changes and maximize my time shooting and not my time messing around with the equipment while I'm at an event, especially when I'm shooting it by myself. So for the past couple of years, I've really started using the Sony 24-70 GM lens, which is a 2.8 lens. This is the Mark II. It's a little bit lighter than the Mark I, and the Sony 70-200. And this is also the Mark II for that GM lens, and it's also a 2.8 aperture. So these both have low enough apertures that I can get a lot of light in when I open them up, but they also cover an entire range of 24-200 for me in just two lenses. So I have 24mm to 200mm, all at f2.8 if I want it, between those two lenses. Now, these are not cheap lenses, but if you're gonna be able to cover an event like this with just two pieces of glass, I think they're way worth it, especially if that's kind of your bread and butter, if that's something you do a lot of. I think a very similar setup for weddings is also very helpful. So I can't say enough about the 24-70 and the 70-200 when it just comes to the versatility of the lenses and their ability to help you cover a lot of range with not needing a lot of lenses. So I fly my 24-70 on a gimbal rig. This is the Ronin RS4 gimbal. It is a great gimbal for a rig of this weight. I have some other gimbals. I have the Mini and some things like that, but with using a little bit heavier lens like this, having the RS4 is nice because it will handle it no problem. Now, the 24-70 is a zoom lens and it's not internal zoom. So that means the barrel extends when you zoom it in and out. And that's important when you're gonna balance your gimbal because you need to account for that. But before that, we need to make sure we take off our lens cap because that's gonna change the weight. And I'm gonna put on a variable ND filter because, like I was saying earlier, you get into all kinds of different lighting scenarios when you are doing a corporate event. So if you're gonna shoot in log and be locked into your base ISOs, you very well may need an ND filter to get your exposure right. It's a nice idea to clean your lens before you put another piece of glass on top of it, just so you're not trapping any dust in there. This is just a Tiffin variable ND filter. Nothing too fancy, but it gets the job done really, really well. Okay, so now that that's on there, I've got everything on the camera, but I'm actually going to zoom it about halfway out before I balance. That way the lens is at kind of its average weight. You know, the ratio is kind of the average, because sometimes I'll shoot wider and it'll be more back heavy. Sometimes I'll shoot tighter, it'll be more front heavy. But balancing it in the middle with a gimbal like this, it's really gonna handle most of what you do with it at that point. So I'm gonna plug in, I use the trigger cable just because it saves my battery life a little bit versus doing the Bluetooth triggering method. But now that I've got it plugged in, I'm gonna balance this up. And the kinds of shots that I tend to get with this rig when I'm shooting corporate events, I'm gonna use this for all of the wide room shots, you know, when there's a speaker on stage or a band on stage or whatever. Like kind of every time there's a session, a main session, I'll cover, you know, I'll do a shot from each corner, a shot from the back middle, a shot walking down the aisle if there's an aisle, you know, like those kind of things with it. Just any kind of general B-roll of people kind of mingling, people coming in, people leaving, things like that. I'll use this rig for a lot of stuff. I will also, in just a second here, I'll put a shotgun mic on this rig. One, because I want good ambient audio just from the shots that I'm getting, so the client has something they can use if they do decide they want to use, you know, just get the sense of the environment through what you're hearing. But also because this is a great rig with the 24-70, because you can get wide enough if they want to do man on the street style interviews or something like that. You can get close enough with a shotgun mic like this one. There's tons of stuff like this out there. This is a Deity V-Mic Mini, but you can get the Rode video mics or whatever. Really kind of anything. I'll plug that in after I get things balanced up here. But I put that on my rig so that we can get you can get audio with what we're shooting. Okay, so once I have this thing balanced up manually, I'll do a little calibration on it. We'll wait for that. It's pretty quick. Done. All right, so that is my gimbal rig for corporate event stuff. So I'll be able to use that again to walk around and get all kinds of different shots. And it's a great all-around rig for the grand majority of what you're gonna be shooting. The other thing that I use then is I take a second camera and I put a Sony 70 to 200 millimeter lens on it. I'm gonna put a variable ND filter on this as well, because the same reason we put the VND on that. We're gonna be in all kinds of lighting scenarios. This is going to be the camera that I pull out when I need to get tighter shots. That might be when people are mingling in between sessions. We want to get some of those just tighter interaction shots, people smiling and laughing with one another. During the sessions, after I've kind of gotten the wide shots that I want to get with the gimbal rig, this is what's going to let me get the tight shots of the speaker on stage, tight shots of the audience interacting, or anything like that without having to get up in people's faces and get so close to people. That 200 millimeter really gives me some range. And a lot of times the way I use this is my camera bag down here. Let me zip it up and I'll show you. So I have a sling camera bag, and a lot of times I just bring it around in front of me and I use the camera bag to stabilize myself as I'm shooting with the 70-200. And I can get a lot of really great handheld stuff at 200 millimeters if I do this. It really gives me a lot of nice points of contact with my body, and the camera bag itself gives me just some more stability to be able to shoot. There's some products out there on the market that do some similar things, but I have the kind of camera bag that lets me just sling it around like that anyway. So I've always just used it. The last couple things I'll say here is when I'm covering an event, I definitely make sure I bring lots of batteries. I'll be probably tomorrow on, I think it's maybe an 8-hour day. The next day is a little shorter, but still, you want to make sure you've got power the whole time. Bring a charger with you in case you need to charge batteries up while you're there. And make sure you have a really good idea of what the client wants. I've gotten to do a couple of consults with this client at this point. We've got a shot list from them of what they're looking for. And so I think it's going to be a really successful event. I'm hoping we're going to have a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed this kind of rig rundown. I would love to hear if you have any comments or questions about it, and if I can help you kind of figure out any tweaks to your rig that might help you be a little more efficient, then I would love to do that. So drop a comment down if you'd like to. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.